What is going on, fight fans? Teofimo Lopez is now a three-division world champion after his defeat of Romero last night, where he now becomes a WBA welterweight champion. Let me get right to my pros and my cons. Let me start with Teofimo. The jab. His jab was excellent. Teofimo understood that he was fighting at a naturally bigger weight than he is. He's fighting a naturally bigger opponent. So instead of him being reckless and trying to just show how tough he was or that he made that weight so well, he stayed behind the jab. He used his legs. He controlled distance, and he made Rolly reset, and he made him do that over and over and over. Next, I did like Teofimo's composure. Rolly had his moments. He even opened up that cut over Teofimo's eye, but Teofimo stayed composed. He never lost his mental toughness. He never lost his focus, and he actually regrouped and he went right back to boxing. He didn't let that throw him off. I also like his conditioning at 147. I'm always kind of concerned when a fighter goes up in weight, but sometimes that fighter can be slower, especially when they're trying to like pack on muscle at that higher weight. But I didn't see that being a major problem at all. I thought that Teofimo looked natural. I thought that he still looked strong, and I thought that he was still thinking. And I thought that late in the fight, his punches and his power, was still carrying. And as I mentioned earlier, his composure held on. As for the cons for Teofimo, the biggest con to me is that he can still be caught during exchanges, and that fifth round proved that. And that it kind of concerns me about what other fighters at 147 would think about his chin. See, because Rolly is a dangerous puncher, so you got to think that there are going to be other fighters, particularly high-pressure fighters at 147, who are going to see that, and they might want to use that against him. As for Rolly Romero, the pros would be that his power is legitimate. It always has been, and it still is. Even though he wasn't throwing enough punches when Rolly landed clean, you could see that Teofimo respected his power. Rolly also showed some patience. We've seen him fight reckless before, but in this fight, he was trying to set traps. He was trying to counter instead of just like charging forward. As my cons for Romero, I would say he simply just did not throw enough punches. You cannot give away like these long stretches of a championship fight trying to wait for that perfect, counter. In a championship fight like this, Rolly, he needed some urgency. So instead of those, we saw those stretches where Teofimo was able, to jab, score, move, and basically bank rounds without having to actually make major risks. I thought that Rolly spent much of the fight waiting for like the perfect counter. He was waiting for too many counter shot opportunities, while consistently trying to push the action against Teofimo, which he should have did. Let's talk about the fight a little bit. Early in the fight, Teofimo established what the night was going to look like. He was going to make Rolly come and find him. He was going to use his jab. He was going to keep moving laterally and force Romero to initiate his offense. Now, that's important because Rolly is much more comfortable when an opponent comes forward towards him. And you could tell that Teofimo knew that. If he rushed Rolly, he could explode with those awkward power shots. But Teofimo wasn't giving him that opportunity. He didn't give him that chance. Then he got back, in the middle portion of the fight. And, that's when the things became interesting. Rolly landed a big hook in that fifth round to open up that cut. Lopez, was rocked by a powerful right hand. Now, for the moment, he started wondering whether the extra power at welterweight was going to become a problem for Teofimo. But as I mentioned earlier, he didn't panic. He kept his composure. More importantly, he made Rolly, work to find him. As the fight went on, Teofimo started separating himself. Rolly was still dangerous, but danger alone, that doesn't win rounds. See, Teofimo was landing more. He was controlling the pace. He was controlling the ring generalship, as they would say. And when Rolly waited, Teofimo took advantage of it. Now, Rolly did have another good moment, and this was in the 11th round, when a left hook appeared to stagger Lopez. But again, he couldn't really build on it. By the 12th round, I thought Rolly needed to fight like his championship depended on it. I wanted to see him take some more risks. I wanted to see him pressure a little bit, maybe try to force some exchanges, maybe, make the fight look a little ugly. Instead, Teofimo was able to finish the fight doing what he did for most of the fight, which was controlling the fight, using his boxing intelligence, and keeping Rolly from consistently getting his offense going. So what does this mean for Teofimo? Well, this was a huge win for him. He now has a world championship as a lightweight, as a super lightweight, and now as a welterweight. And you got to think about the timing. Teofimo was coming off of that one-sided loss to Shakur Stevenson earlier. And, people were starting to question him. People were wondering where he belonged. Then he jumped up to 147, fights a legitimate puncher, and immediately wins a world championship. Now, that says something about the talent that Lopez, still has. Now, does that mean he's automatically the best welterweight in the world, or necessarily even a top 2 or 3? Not necessarily, because Rolly gave him his opportunities, to earn this shot that others may not give him. But Teofimo has officially put himself in the conversation for some massive fights. Which brings me to my final thoughts. I think that Teofimo had a pretty good fight. I would say maybe A- B+. It wasn't a perfect fight. He did get hurt. He did have that cut. And there are still, as I've always had for him, some defensive questions. But this was his first fight at welterweight against a legitimate world champion, and he came out with the win. As for Rolly Romero, I'm gonna probably have to give him a C, probably a solid C. I don't think that he was embarrassed. He definitely had some good moments. He showed that his power is still legit there, but you just cannot wait for one big punch when you're fighting someone as talented as Lopez is, and that's exactly what he was doing. So now what happens with Teofimo Lopez? Who should he fight next? David Haney is out there. We got Ryan Garcia, Conor Benn, or maybe someone else. Who do you see? Who do you want to see Teofimo fight next? He showed to me in this fight that he belongs at welterweight. I thought that he looked really good last night. I thought that he would have a little more trouble with Romero, but he proved himself very worthy. So, fight fans, what were your thoughts on the fight? Who did you pick to win the fight? Was it Romero? Was it Lopez? And what do you want to see Teofimo do next? All right, if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so we can keep talking boxing. That's all I got for this one. Until next time, peace.